welcome. This is the continuation of the reading of Walking a Rainbow, written by me, Michael Shearer, the story of walking the Camino de Santiago with my son Kez, age 9. This is chapter 15, called Time and Time Again. We were in Navarrete, and then staying in the monastery there, and this begins when we leave. Chapter 15, Time and Time Again. The walk to Nájera was dull. Much road, no fountains, and long dusty paths made of face powder, while swaggering across the clear sky, the coarse sun mugged the earth. An ugly factory by a river fitted the mood of crude oppression. Only a canal with deep, swift-flowing, dark green water spoke of relief. The fierce Spanish drivers careered past us as if infected by the loutish sun. The big problem was when they were overtaking, which they did in the most unsuitable places. This wasn't so bad with oncoming traffic. We could see what was coming and take evasive action. But sometimes a pair of overtaking cars would come up unseen from behind and scream past inches away. This lethal stream had slaughtered a variety of dead animals whose corpses accosted the nose. Dogs and cats, small mammals, birds, snakes had been mashed into a lurid mess. Knocking down an animal was no cause to stop. There is a class structure among pilgrims. The aristocrats are the rare horse riders, elevated and stately above the rest. Then come the nobles, the thoughtful walkers. After that the yeoman cyclists. Everyone looks askance at the peasants, the motorists. Claudio spoke of the Rosicrucian movement, alchemy, theosophy, medieval mystics, and the Catholic Mass, of which he seemed to disapprove. He said that he often wakes himself up with his own laughter. The first building on the edge of Nájera was the Bar Sancho, where I downed 3 beers in swift succession. The discovery of the slang for a glass of draught beer, una caña, had solved the premature toilet problem. Remember the 2 words? Servicios, toilet, cerveza, beer. The bar was tiled throughout in cool white with a huge black Spanish fan, too big for any woman to use, on the wall. The only other customer was a grizzled old man who looked as if he'd been left in the sun for a month and it had turned his brains. His skin was burnt dark like an Arab and shrivelled like a prune. An unlit cigar hung limp from his mouth. A battered straw hat adorned his head. He stared blankly through burnt-out eyes and said nothing. We plodded across the bridge over the Rio Nájera, though there wasn't much of a river beneath. Frogs croaked below like sick Brent geese. Through the back streets I glanced through a grill in a wall to see a coven of skinny feral cats, a scrawny mother feeding her scrawny young. A host of suspicious lemon eyes with chocolate slits accosted me wildly. A stork's nest like a compost heap topped a church tower. Claudio took us straight to the monastery of Santa Maria la Real, where the surly custodian was most reluctant to let us in. We were eventually shown into a long, narrow room with a very hard and cold marble floor. Sleeping bags were arranged around its walls. We found some spaces and staked out our claim. People around had wet hair, and inquiry revealed the place had showers. I couldn't remember the last time I had a shower. It was delicious and worth the queue. Kes had hobbled the last few miles into Nájera. I couldn't find anything obviously wrong with his feet, so I massaged them with lavender oil and gave him an ankle pill. I could find no English entry in the Pilgrim's book, although one Spanish girl had signed with an imprint of her lips in lipstick, a soft, sensual pink, which troubled my dreams. We ate out at the Hotel San Fernando, which did a discount for pilgrims, chicken and chips. The waitress said something about me which caused Claudio to laugh. "What does she say, Claudio?" "She says, you have emotional hands." The barman was tying fishing flies. While we were eating, the light fitting on the wall smoked for a while and then burst into flames. A waiter dealt with it calmly, unmoved, as if it happened every day. Spanish wiring is a nightmare. They have half a dozen items piggybacked off the same socket, worn leads taped over or twisted together. Risk is part of Spanish culture. Back in the pilgrim's room, at a large table by the door, some Spaniards were talking excitedly. One had his very small rucksack on the table. You can take what you like on pilgrimage, your life's journey, as long as you can carry it. Vincent, had the essentials with him. A spare t-shirt, shorts, socks, and 3 recorders of different sizes, plus a great wad of sheet music. He lovingly took up one of the recorders and played a Baroque piece to illustrate his point. Kes admired a Spanish pilgrim's leather hat and was presented with it as a gift. Soon a guitar appeared and a lively sing-song developed, smiles and friendly feeling everywhere, till a middle-aged man came in and told us we were keeping the monks awake and would be please stop. I went off to my hard bed. The man next to me snored loudly. He got the full treatment: hisses, tuts, clicks, a flashing torch, and eventually coins thrown at him. He slept on, unperturbed. I stuffed some toilet paper in my ears and went to sleep. Although Kes had slept next to me, on the other side to the snorer, he was nowhere to be seen in the morning. I found him halfway down the crowded room, having in his sleep somehow negotiated all the intervening bodies. He was flat on his back, with his legs vertical up a wall, still sleeping. Claudio, like Kes, was a late riser. Having to wait for them did me a lot of good. I was still too frequently restless to get on, so I wandered about. At first I felt frustrated, yet I gradually realised that I already knew that being somewhere else wouldn't make any difference. I would be restless in the next place too, thus the frustration. The restlessness was to get to a different psychological place, to be otherwise, not to reach somewhere. I took a stroll around the monastery. The cloisters were exotic. A well and tall palm trees in the centre, extraordinary tracery in the windows, full of fat, curly animals arranged like an espalier tree. A woman, her legs widely splayed, at the foot of one. Celebrations of fecundity. The tracery threw lacy shadows on the floor of the honey-sunned walkways. The scale of cloisters encourages thought. Followers of Aristotle were called peripatetics, wanderers, because of their habit of walking around, the precursor of cloisters, discussing philosophical problems. The architecture embodies the process. round and round, returning to the problem, getting back to where you were, seeing the problem differently each circuit. Here a problem could be walked through under the auspices of sun and fertility, male and female. We climbed out of Nájera under a cloudy sky, along a path made of pale rust, flanked by faintly red rocks, through a conifer forest and then into open country. My spirit eased as I climbed and opened somewhat as we reached the wide spaces. Just before Athofra, we caught up with a handsome Brazilian woman, maybe in her early 40s. We talked in hamstrung French. She chatted in a manner which fended us off. Her troubled eyes troubled me, always flitting painfully elsewhere, deeply unhappy and self-obsessed. She was at the edge of tears and ready to give up. I couldn't find anything I had the ability to say which might break through. It occurred to me that a simple hug might say much and would have gone a long way, but I was too English to dispense it. We had an awkward drink together in Athofra and reluctantly left her there when she stayed to eat. She was unreachable. Athofra is a brick village with a dirt and concrete main street. It had tractors and farm wagons parked either side. Dogs slept on the shady side. An idiot sat on a curb mumbling to himself. On the left, at the end of the village, was a neat little park with a fountain where Claudio paddled in the basin to refresh his feet. The main crops in the nearby allotment were spinach and gladioli. 3 deaf pilgrims arrived, but they were wary, an insular group. A little further on, a thunderstorm broke, suddenly just as we passed an abandoned van in a field. It stood alone, as if the fields had worn away around it to reveal a monstrous alien skull. It was yellowy white, the colour of old bones, with irregular spatters of rust, the empty sockets of its headlamps like gouged eyes. We took refuge in it, laughing at the automatic sprinklers continuing to spray the drenched fields in the heavy rain. I brewed up some chicken soup. When the rain had stopped, I decided to take the number plate as a souvenir. It was a Logroño number, and so had the prefix LO. This was followed by VE, so it read LO-EVE. I showed it to Claudio, who thought the number itself, 21634, was also significant, as it added up to 1616, which made 7. Apparently, this was a very fortuitous number. The letters and the number were red on a white background. I've got it here. There. Love. 7. All very lucky. You know the tradition on the Camino that what you find is significant for you, and you're developing a symbolic perception by the process, contrary to simply literal perception. Here's a car. A car is a car is a car. Back on the way, nothing but a bare stony path to the horizon between stubble fields. On the next road we passed a sign to the right for a place called Cuevas de la Degollada. I asked Claudio what it meant. "It is a very strange name," he replied. "It means curves of the woman with the slit throat." I went cold and told him about the slashed teddy bear at Navarrete. "You are a seer," he said. "When is your birthday?" September 11. "A Virgo. It must be somewhere else in your chart. At what time were you born?" "I don't know." "You must find out, and I will do your chart for you." "Okay. I hope this slit throat business doesn't point further into the future." Claudio said nothing. We took a long break in a field littered with straw. A proper rest with our boots off. Like a cat at a shut door, I could only rest and learn patience. Patience clearly was what I needed. Kes busied himself in the straw while Claudia and I talked. There was so much time. We discovered that we had a similar conception of the word seer, or seer, as Claudio pronounced it. A seer experiences time differently from the norm. For most people, time ticks away. The present slips into the past, which becomes forever lost. The future has yet to be. Only the present truly exists. It's not like that for seers. Things happen that make meaningful bridges across time. Brain researchers tend not to talk about the mind perceiving time anymore. They speak of the brain representing time. It makes its own. Mostly it works hard to match its inner time with the way the world works. If you are a slip fielder, you have to correlate what you do with what the world is doing. Equally when crossing a busy road. But the neurologists have found the inner mechanisms for making our own time, and this means we can change it. If something happens so that we need to slow time to give us more space to act, then we can do it. There are other instances of our capacity to manipulate time. The seer joins events from the past to what is happening now and what is yet to happen. Somehow. I was worried about the bear with its throat cut. Maybe someone I knew had died, perhaps violently. Maybe, but perhaps not. These things are symbolic, said Claudio quietly. I told Claudio that I found him a calming influence. I am not naturally calm. I am nervous and have to get things right, a Virgo like you. I check everything over and over, but I have a bad heart and it would not be good to get upset. Not long ago, when my typewriter jammed, I smashed it in anger. Typewriter? I don't like modern things. Claudio carried a portable sundial rather than a watch. Come and see what I've made, Dad. I saw a huge pile of straw fashioned into a hollow donut, maybe 9 feet across. Very good. What exactly is it, Kes? It's a stork's nest. Ah, so it is. Well, make sure the stork doesn't bring you something you didn't expect. You do talk rubbish, Dad. Thanks, Kes. Can't understand you half the time. He busied himself tidying up his nest. When he joined us, his socks were spiky with straw. You cannot walk like that, said Claudio. Give me your socks, and I'll take out the straw. It took ages. He was painstaking. We had some more tea. At long last every shred was removed and the red socks returned to Kes. 20 minutes later they were smothered with snippets of straw all over again. Claudio smiled and sat and removed each piece once more. We lost the Camino and its harsh, arid, stone-riddled paths in the wide plain around Santo Domingo and just aimed for the Baroque church tower. On the edge of town, in an alleyway between 2 factories which smelt of burning tyres, my rucksack fell off my back. Something had snapped. Your rucksack is your home. It felt like a disaster. I picked it up in my arms like a huge child and carried it through the alleyway to the edge of a field. Meanwhile, Kes and Claudio, who had been ahead, had realised something was wrong and strolled back to me. We stared at the casualty on the ground. What are you going to do, Dad? I'm going to have a cup of tea. The rucksack wasn't going anywhere. The problem wasn't going to get any worse. We left the bag where it lay, went into the field and brewed up. Kes had a fast-swelling insect bite, which I treated with lavender oil and an antihistamine tablet. Down the path came a short, bearded pilgrim wearing blue jeans, a white shirt and a badly tied turban. He had no rucksack, only a small shoulder bag, obviously almost empty. We offered him some tea and bread and cheese. He replied in a strong French accent, "No food. I do not eat much, you know. I do not need it. I live," he gestured around at the landscape, smiling, "on the spiritual food." "You don't carry much, I see." "My first master, he say, a man must carry little on his path." Right, master. You follow some particular sect, some group?" "My second master, he say, you know, he say, a bee sucks at many flowers." He nodded sagely. "My first master, he say, you know, there is more than one path up the mountain," he went on. "Oh, well, where did you find these masters?" "India, you know. I go there many years. I nearly die there." And now you're walking to Santiago." "Some days I walk to Santiago, some days no." He sat, arranged his legs in the lotus position, looked around, nodding his head slightly, smiling as if Spain belonged to him. "I have, you know, no money," he told us smugly. "None at all?" "A little, I beg. The people give. It is good, you know, for them to give. If I got money, I eat. It is good. If I not got money, I not eat. It is good too." He grinned spiritually. I got up to take a closer look at my rucksack. A metal ring which held the bag to the frame had sheared through. I didn't have a replacement. We searched the dusty path for something to use as a temporary fix. I found a white feather for my hat, and eventually Kes found a ring pull from a can. Cut through and bent a bit, it did the job. We walked on, waving cheerily to the light of India in his turban, who was settling down for a nap. The hostel at Santo Domingo was a gem. Through the ancient wooden door was a cobbled courtyard, the stones in a chevron pattern. A wooden farm cart with studded wheels was parked in a corner, shafts up in the air. A cartwheel candelabra swung above. Upstairs the dormitory was homely, a rich, warm, carmine stone-tiled floor, walls and ceiling of wooden beams with a white plaster infill. Real beds, with checkered blankets in red and blue. The room had a gingham feel to it without actually being any. Someone cared about how it looked and felt, and had made it domestic and welcoming. People lounged about comfortably, writing diaries and postcards. They nodded greeting amiably. Through the window we could hear the clacking beaks of the storks fussing over their huge, untidy nest on the church tower. There was a kitchen with an oven that worked, and plenty of pots and pans and utensils, showers even. After half an hour it was our home. On the wall was a poster advertising an exhibition in the town, Life on the Pilgrimage. It showed 4 late medieval pilgrims in long one-piece gowns in brown, red and Mary's indigo. Flying saucer hats, thin gloves, their eyes resolutely ahead, large staves ready. At their feet, ignored, was an immense winding snake, brown as dust. The mayor arrived, showing someone around. He wanted to know if we were settling in all right. The town was proud of its hostel. A blind French pilgrim arrived with his helper. I imagined them toiling over the rocky slopes of the Pyrenees, hand in hand. We all took a late siesta. In the early evening, Kes and I went for a stroll. The streets were full of young men promenading, pushing buggies, pushchairs, prams, heads high, proud of their podgy, overfed infants. We went into the bar Los Arcos for a drink. A thick-set man, black hair and dark, furtive eyes, overhearing our English, came and introduced himself. Andreas, a Basque from Bilbao. A nervous man and slightly drunk, he kept looking over his shoulder as if checking for spies. He sat hunched, as if burdened with worry. Basques were persecuted, he explained. The Spanish did not like Basques, did not trust them. When he drank his red wine and coke, he threw the glass at his mouth, splashing the liquid over his jaw. He spoke fast, in fragments, his eyes darting about neurotically. He asked me if there were books on eschatology in England, the study of death and judgment day and life after death. Swearing profusely, he explained that there were no Spanish books on the subject. The Catholics didn't allow it. He made it sound like a conspiracy. Theatrically glancing over his shoulder, he confided to us that the world was going to end in 7 years. No doubt about it. Was Finland a good place to die? He asked anxiously, explaining that he did not want to die in a hot country. Perhaps Finland might even escape the end altogether, he inquired. I told him that it seemed unlikely that anywhere could escape such a time. He asked me if I knew any nice English women who wanted to get married. Men were no good, he said. Cared only for football. Trivial, superficial materialists. Did I know of a woman who might go to Finland to die with him? I promised to keep my eye open for one. He insisted on swapping addresses. We shook his large, sweaty hand and left. We went from there to the theatre, which advertised a spectacular, a one-night only, free show. The Teatro Avenido was a shabby genteel place that had seen better days. Posters outside advertised La Vida de Brian, the life of Brian. Inside they had a variety show, allegedly from Madrid. Lots of skimpily dressed chorus girls, some singers, and a smattering of comic sketches. Kes got bored and went back to the refuge. On stage, a monk in his habit conversed with a wisecracker. I understood little, but it was clear from the sharp intakes of breath from the audience and the gestures from the cast that the patter was full of dirty jokes or something like, or worse, anti-Catholic jokes. A substantial matriarch rose to her feet at the back of the auditorium and loudly, magisterially issued peremptory commands. Nobody paid much attention to the sketch. The drama was elsewhere. A string of children at the front got up silently and obediently trooped out like a line of goslings. The sketch proceeded in desperation, while other big-bosomed mums in the audience popped up here and there and clucked at their brood, ordering their children out. And they went. The audience buzzed with indignant disapproval at the luckless actors. Sitting at the refectory table in the hostel, Claudio was crafting an entry in the Pilgrim's Book. He had drawn an elaborate Celtic cross, while the surrounding calligraphic text was full of astrological symbols. "You have many feathers now," he remarked, his eyes pointing to my hat. "Did you know that it is a tradition for pilgrims to collect feathers and put them in the hat?" "No," I replied, pleased that I'd found a tradition intuitively. "What does it signify?" "I do not know." "It must have something to do with birds, of course. They're symbols of liberation. A desire to join the angels, perhaps." He looked at me oddly. "Maybe so." Plato says in the Phaedrus that of all bodily things the wing is most divine. It takes what is heavy and raises it up to the place of the gods. In the kitchen, Kes was having a mime and gesture conversation with Jose, an abrasive young man from Navarre, with a rough laugh. I joined them just as Jose pushed back the shirt sleeve of his left arm to reveal some ugly, suppurating sores. "Santiago," he said vigorously. "Whoop!" The noise was like a brisk whistle made through pursed lips. As he spoke, the other hand skimmed above his bad arm as if reaping the disease. The hand opened to the window as if releasing doves. "Santiago," he repeated strongly. The saint would cure his festering arm. It was a fact. His eyes fiercely challenged me to deny it. I looked away. We had had a whip round for a communal meal. Claudio had been shopping and filled the table with fruits and vegetables. "What are those thin things, those long thin things, Dad?" "Asparagus. Just the right shape for dipping in the chili sauce." Kes was dunking them in the Tabasco. It was all far more than we could eat, so Claudio distributed the considerable remainder among the other pilgrims. In the dormitory, many were already abed. The 3 deaf pilgrims had arrived, a young gaunt man with a scrappy beard and 2 young women. As he prepared for bed, he hummed loudly to himself, rustled plastic bags, banged about with his pots and pans, calmly oblivious in his silent world to the ill feeling this noise created around him. People would resent this and treat him coolly in the morning. No wonder he was wary of others, and being the dominant one in the trio, he would set the tone for the group.